All right. Hello and welcome to Resilient Voices and Beyond. I'm so excited for you guys on this episode. I have a very special guest, a dear friend, a brother of mine's on here, and I'm just like so excited for you guys to listen. Just a couple of things I wanted to be able to touch base before we get right into this episode is that in developing this podcast, I want to be able to provide a platform for often forgive me because I can't speak authenticity and just real stories and not just real stories from just alumni sharing their voices, but from also professionals and different people that have stakes in the child welfare system and all surrounding it, but also to be able to educate on foster care because believe it or not, foster care is still unknown to some people. It still has certain stigmas surrounding it and different things like that. And there's so little different homes, for teens or for, any ages. So just being able to provide this space to be able to educate and to just have conversations. I like to think about the phrase, let's talk about it. We do a lot of things where we push it under the rug and so forth, but we don't talk about it. We don't have those hard conversations. So this is why I'm here. This is why Resilient Voices is out here and the platform is here to be able to share that. Without further ado, I would love for my guest Marcus, aka Brotha Encouragement, to be able to introduce himself.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Like he said, my name is Marcus Batson. I go by Brotha Encouragement as well. I love to encourage people. I am from Flint, Michigan. I am a former foster youth. I like to think of myself as someone that loves to give back, encourage people. I have a passion for working with youth as well, and I really love reminiscing on the opportunities I either had as a youth or I wish I had as a youth, and then trying to find ways to help our young people today. Not only in foster care, those that are in foster care, and I do still work with a lot of youth and have that are in care, but just youth, period, as well. And so I do a lot. I do a lot. They say like some people might call it like a jack of all trades. I don't say I would do that, but I do a lot to the extent that I don't think I'm many can be identified as just doing any one thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it right now. But I'm glad to be on here. With on Resilient Voices, and I'm looking forward to us having a great conversation.
Great, great. Thank you for that introduction. So, I'm gonna get right into it. If you don't mind me asking, if you could kind of share a little bit of your story, and what led you to the place you are at as an adult. I know you've done a lot of, advocacy. I know you've been a part of programs like MYOI and,
Correct.
NFYI and so forth. But, for the listeners and different things like that, because I know you've had a journey yourself,
Yes.
and if you feel comfortable sharing, kind of displaying how you got to that place of advocacy and social work and college and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time someone asks me, I've had the opportunity to share, about my story, and I think it's like more of a series of stories, and so every time someone asks, I don't feel like it's ever the same part, as well. And for some people, I admire that when they share their stories, and they go from point A to point B and to C. Mine is not like that as well, but I really can speak on it in generalities. I grew up being in and out of foster care, so I didn't age out of foster care. I was, in foster care on several different occasions. I even think I might have went into care right out of the hospital actually at birth too. Although I've yet to confirm that as well. But I was in and out of foster care. I grew up with my mom raising not only myself but also my other, how many is it of us? Six, seven siblings all together. I had an adult, well, sister that's about a decade or so older than I am, and then pretty much it was my mom with her, last six kids. We moved around a lot, and just some of those things that anyone that's familiar with foster care are some of those precursors that you normally see with youth that have experienced foster care. We went in mainly for issues surrounding poverty, either not having a place to live. There were times where my mom was struggling with drug addiction as well. Just a lot of different situations, but that never been to residential care, but normally in foster homes, and I've experienced foster homes with family, but then also just with different homes as well. And so for me, when I first got into doing advocacy for foster care, and Michael, like a lot of the programs, being in care is kind of like a requirement to like get into some of these programs and everything. And I would always listen to people share their stories, and I always kind of felt like, man, I didn't really have any like crazy stories to tell from like my time in foster care. It was just it. Now, granted, that was a long time ago as well. I'm an old head in the foster care game, and so there wasn't a lot of focus really on like youth involvement. They weren't asking us questions. They weren't trying to find out, how to make things work better, and so when I initially got into it, I used to kind of like not feel that, my story could really, be inspiring or anything. And I would, a lot of times just kind of default to others. Right. But, as I've learned, I've come to appreciate that for me, I don't believe that it was about me necessarily sharing what stories or the crazy things that I might have experienced in homes. And I've experienced some funny things now, definitely. I love talking about some of the funny parts of it and looking back and being able to laugh on it. But just the experience itself opened the door for me to really be able to, meet others, to be able to advocate, and to be able to not only share my experiences, but really just share my passion for just helping others as well too. It's been really beautiful. And so, in and out of foster care, the last time I was in foster care was like early high school. And then not too long after I came back home, we kind of like came back home every time. I ended up moving out from my mom's home I was 16, as well, and started like living with someone else. But that pretty much kind of like started my journey of being on my own and going to school and everything else. Now, you asked also about, just how, I'm trying to tell it in a way where it leads to, kind of like my adult time. I moved from my mom's, from out with my mom, and it more so was I was just offered I got a lot of support. Let me say that as well. Like I went to this high school that I went to. It was my 18th different high school when I finally got there as well. I believe like from first to fifth grade, I was at 3 schools each year, 3 different schools. So we moved around a lot, and I was just kind of like experiencing at least some stability. Usually I tell the story of my life, and I'm able to put it in order by remembering what school I was at, because I had that many school changes. We moved even more times than that. And so, man, it really does get fuzzy with all of the moving, all of the foster homes, all of that. And so school has always been a big part, of my life. And, I feel like I've always had like a teacher that would like kind of show some extra care with me or take me under the wing, whether I was at that school for a week or a couple months, because we moved around, like I said, a lot, and I always reflected back on that. And so that always, that left an impression on me that I wanted to be able to kind of like offer the same type of thing. And actually, growing up, I used to always envision myself as being a teacher, either a teacher or a businessman. And I think that was one, reason why. But when I got to college, and I went to college on an academic scholarship, which was part of another reason why I moved out with my mom. She was going to move again moving out of the city where, we were living. And I had to graduate in that city in order to get that academic scholarship. I was just tired of moving, and there was no other opportunity that I had that was guaranteed like that. And so after moving 5 times, in those 3 years, while still being able to stay at the same high school, it was right before my senior year. Of course, you don't want to go anywhere after your senior year, especially, and you definitely don't want to lose an opportunity for a scholarship. And so that's how I ended up going to the college I went to. Is the University of Michigan in Flint, Michigan. So they have a Flint campus, and I went there, and that's pretty much where I see kind of like where my journey really kind of started. I was working with an office that supported and helped students, and that's where I kind of like started to really develop my passion for working just with young people, not only young adults, but also we had high school programs, and we did all kind of things there. And I got a chance to just meet all kind of students and hear all kind of stories, and I just loved it. And I found myself being able to draw now on all of these experiences that I had working, or coming up through school, coming up through all of these different schools, meeting all different kind of people, right? And being able to put that to use. I went and I initially majored saying, oh yeah, I'm going to major in business. And they placed me in a business calculus class, and I barely passed it, not even by the hair of my chinny chin chin, because I didn't even have a beard yet. So barely passed. And after that semester, I quickly changed, at least undeclared that major. I really like to say that, how I got into social work. My undergraduate is a bachelor's in social work. I really was kind of around a lot of social workers at the time. I didn't really know what they did because my only experience with social workers were CPS and foster care workers. And we know how that can be perceived, especially with us foster care alumni. We have just some strange, bizarre, sad stories. Some great, as well, but it's never just any one thing. And so I never really saw myself doing that. But the social work, I think, was just kind of like pulling on me just because of the nature of social work. And obviously their target audience is who I used to be, probably who I was still at that time. And also it represented the people that I cared about, the kids that I worked with every day, the young adults and the students that I worked with every day, my family, that I just knew the things that they were going on. And, I remember talking to someone while I was taking an introduction to social work class. We had to interview them, and something that they shared with me kind of left an impression on me that, anybody seeing a social worker, they deserve to be serviced by somebody that's a professional. And I always had this really high idea of what a professional was, and that really drove me to become better, to learn more, because the more resourceful I could be, the more, I'd be able to help, someone else. And I've taken that same attitude not only from my school and professional career, but when I started to get into advocacy and advocating in foster care, which kind of like, I feel like it just fell in my lap, because again, I was from the day when they weren't doing any of it, but I also had the opportunity to be there at the beginning, especially here in the state of Michigan, where they really started to take it serious, and I was able to be a part of a lot of that. But it also helped me to develop my attitude and what kind of advocate that I could be, for others. And so my introduction actually to advocacy, like I said, I never really saw my actual experiences in being in an actual foster home as remarkable. I really tried to I remember being in a foster home that was right in my city, and so the only thing I felt like was different was I was sleeping, at a different place. I knew where my mom was at. I used to kind of like go over there, but we never stayed there. It was never really was kind of like oblivious really to all of the reasons why we were removed, actually. I mean, I felt a lot of times like there were a lot of things that we knew what were going on in our family that CPS had no idea what was going on, so there were a lot of different things. But I used to still play sports, and we would just walk home. And I remember one home, the lady said we had to be there at 7. We used to get there right at 6:59, and just go to school, be at school, sports, all of that. So I tried to really make it as regular as possible. But if you've ever like talked and been able to hear some of these great stories, some people have come through some things, And so I always used to think like, man, it wasn't that remarkable, but it did open up some remarkable doors for me. And so when I was in college, one of the last foster care workers, caseworkers that I worked with. Now, when I was even in high school, um, workers weren't that involved like that with youth. Like now, I've worked with other people and seen other people, and they say, "Oh yeah, my worker this," and I've had this relationship. I really can't even. I couldn't have told you the woman's name, at the time, but she remembered me. And there was a program called the Michigan Youth Opportunity Initiatives that had started up. It was a Jim Casey Foundation. So if anyone's familiar with like the Ann E. Casey and the Jim Casey Foundation is part of Casey Family Programs. The Jim Casey started a partnership with the state of Michigan. It's going to be like a 10-year opportunity where they will give Michigan opportunity to build on this program so that they can become self-sufficient with it. They were going to start it on a county by county basis. And she called and asked me about it, if I was interested in that, I would be eligible because I was in foster care at least one day after my 14th birthday. It made me be eligible. And that was, and I'm like, oh yeah, and so it was all a learning experience from there. That was way back in 2007. So years ago, long in the galaxy, far, far away, right? Long ago. But that was my introduction, and it's been, I couldn't go into so much other detail, but that's how I got started. That's where I met others. From MYOI, I was able to do speaking engagements where I was actually being able to share, my story. But again, it also really helped me to really help promote others, because I'm like, yeah, I got these parts I can share with my story, but meet so-and-so, my friend, who's also, can share just great things like me, and they have this part that you can learn from as well. So I've always looked at myself as kind of like being, kind of like a middleman as far as advocacy as well, and really trying to put others on, promote others as well, so that they can have a platform, to be able to share their story as well. Really advocating for other advocates, right? That's pretty much how it was. And, I've been able to see some things that I've been a part of that have been able to come into fruition that I would have loved to have when I was younger. But it's awesome to see and, have some little part of that with, the opportunities that we have, here in the state of Michigan, and some things nationally that now, youth in care are able to benefit from. So it's kind of like how I got into the whole thing with, social work and kind of where I'm at now, and
Okay. I appreciate that. And this is one of the great things about this podcast and just providing this platform is because everybody expects that all story kind of from foster care, and that's that misconception. Foster care is so well rounded. That is not one size fit all. Like there's so many different stories, so many different journeys that people walk. And to say the least, the modern foster care is about prevention. It's about trying to maintain that family home. I can't say that's what it was back then, but and now it's about trying to kind of preserving that family net and different avenues. So I kind of want to touch on that because you are in a unique perspective to see like now versus then, and like you said, like if correct me if I'm wrong, MYOI, Michigan Youth Opportunity Initiative was a pilot program.
Yes, and, it was.
You were kind of one of those unique people in part of that to be able to keep that going and to utilize your experience being a part of that program to develop other things and to get it where we are at now, like as far as being able to talk to the incoming workers and being able to be on panels and being able to give them advice and different things like that. It was because of youth like yourself that we're able to do certain things like that, and that there's this quote unquote thing called foster youth voices,
Mm-hmm.
and using the foster youth voice in legislation, policy, reform, and just having a seat at the table to be able to talk about the experience that no one else have experienced, but that person who has.
Absolutely. Listen, that's you make a great point, and that was a part of it. So with in MYY, we weren't just sharing. That was new, and as you pointed out, I believe now that's actually a normal part of training for, at least in the state of Michigan. It's part of their new hire orientation where new
Yes, it is.
CPS and foster care workers come in, and that's a part of where they will have foster youth alumni to come in to share their stories. But that was new. We were like able to be able to be pioneers of that back then. It wasn't a part, and so those were part of our speaking engagements. And I remember some of those first times, going, and as youth, we thought that you had this idea just about CPS workers, period, and foster care workers, that these are folks that's just kind of like really they're focused on just kind of putting you in the foster care placement. I didn't really have an opinion about foster care workers because I never had interaction with any of the foster care workers that was on, my caseload. That was a entirely different thing. You had people that were making decisions about you. I'm sure that they've went to court while I was in care. I never was in court. The only time I remember being at court, I've never actually been in a courtroom where they ever asked anything about how things were affecting me. The only time, and again, this shaped a lot of my experience until I was able to go there myself. I remember one of the first times where we went into foster care. I believe I was in first grade, and they didn't allow us in the courtroom. We were sitting right outside of the courtroom, and the only thing that I remember is that the door busting open with one of the officers taking my mom out. She's irate, cussing, everyone out. She was really upset. I remember something that, she said to her. She was really angry, and this is kind of like, this is new for her as well, not knowing, kind of what that experience was. And I remember irate and everything, and she stopped and looked at me and my brother and said, when you get older, I want y'all to kill that so and so. And she was talking about, the worker, the CPS worker, I guess at the time, or the social worker. And that just left, we didn't never grow up saying that we wanted to kill her, but it just left just a bad experience. We didn't know what was going on. No one ever explained it, to us. I remember the worker coming out, who she was referring to, kind of smirking and saying, did they arrest her? Did they take her out? Things like that. And it was just all confusing. And then they just take us and we go into a car and go into somebody's house that we never met. Nobody ever told us anything. So that was the only experience that I had to be able to kind of like, or any, as far as with the court proceedings, that I know that there's so many other things that go on now. But back then we didn't know, because again, they just weren't trying to really find out, they weren't thinking about the impact. The whole idea was that, you're removing the kids from care from this situation that they deem as dangerous and not safe from the kid. But there's so many other factors, right? We work in a more trauma informed society now, and they're pushing that more, but they weren't focused on trauma and how the actions of the people that are quote unquote getting paid and to say, protect you, can also be traumatizing as well, and a lot of times even more traumatic. And so I remembered that, still remember that to this day. That was a long time ago. I'm in my 30s now. I'm in my 30s, and I'm not 30 or 31 anymore. So, but I still remember that, and I remember it pretty vividly. And so being in MYOI, I remember when we went to go and to do our first speaking engagement, we thought that it would just kind of be a thing where they wouldn't take interest, or maybe people would, kind of like deflect or whatever. But it was a game changer. The staff, and kudos to them, at least these are people that are going in for the first time, and it really helped to change my mind, to let me know it's not just this black and white, us against them thing, because these were people that were literally, they really had a desire to be able to change lives. They wanted to. And they were just so impacted by the stories that we were sharing from an aspect of, hey, this is what I experienced, good or bad, due to the actions and decision makings of a CPS worker, or a foster care worker, right? And I believe that it really has changed to the point now where you do have, not everybody's not perfect, obviously, but now so many people are having more positive experiences and opportunities as they come up, through foster care, to where your voice, there are platforms and tables where your voice is welcome, wanted at, right? Now we're making policy that is directly influenced by witness and testimony of former foster youth alumni. They're bringing their firsthand input instead of all of these things being considered without them, right? And choices and policies and decisions being made by individuals who have actually never lived out and had those experiences as well. And so you talked about prevention. At the time when we first started, there was just kind of like research and conversation, but they weren't doing anything yet. But that was also the time where, at least for this day, and I think also nationally as well, around the same time, they really started looking at how can we prevent things from happening. Because foster care, CPS is reactive. Something has to happen and then they respond, right? So it's not stopping abuse, right, or neglect necessarily. It might, in some ways, in a lot of ways, it wasn't even stopping the reoccurrence, although that was designed to do, right? And so they're putting millions and millions of dollars, right, into a cyclical program, right, where they just kind of, something happens, you remove the kids and you put them in a home, right? And then they give a couple of things to parents. Oh, yeah, take a parenting class. The parenting class is, on what? What are their parenting? It's the same generic thing as if all of the parents had the same generic needs, right? Sometimes it also ignored the fact that maybe the child needs to be supported more in order to be able to, allow those placements to be more successful. So they put all of this money into something that wasn't working, and eventually they're running out where they don't have enough homes, right, for even all of the kids. So then it turns into, now where do we put the kids? We have, by law, they're removing them. So now they're going into residentials, shelters, hospitals, right? All of these other different places that really have nothing to do with the solution. They are just band-aids, that were happening because they weren't focusing on the real issues, the prevention in the first place. How do you get to the root of the matter to make some real progress, right? And so this is where they really started to discuss prevention. And I'm glad to say that was, I remember even in meetings, where now we're talking with, at this point, these are state level representatives and other decision makers, here in the state, DHHS at the time, some of our state reps, where we're talking to them about, hey, what is being done with prevention? Is there federal or state provisions for prevention? And there wasn't. Right? They thought that prevention was CPS. It's not, And so now today, a couple years ago, actually, which was actually another program that, me and you both are familiar with the National Foster Youth Institute. When I first got involved with them, it was around the same time where they were now pushing the first ever, it's not perfect at all, but it was a step, the first ever prevention law, right? The Families First Prevention Act, where it actually provided some financial provision to have services and support services that parents could get who are at risk for foster care and involvement, not waiting until they got into foster care and now they get all of these services, but actually addressing all of these things that a lot of times lead to kids. And so, it's kind of helped as well. But you're absolutely right. I've been able to see the change and the transition, and there is a lot, being done. There's a lot of opportunity. Now, granted, the opportunity and the programs and everything being there is just one piece. We still need people to go and to actually put their hand to the plow and actually to start to, fight for these programs, obviously, to be implemented, to get the word out so that they can actually be utilized as well. Because if you get an audience and you do have people come in and say, hey, what do you need? You need to be able to say, this is what, we need and to implement those. And I think it's happening, slowly but surely. But it'll have to be a total community or team effort, for us to really start to see, what we all dream for in terms of foster care in the future, right? I like the Casey Foundation's mission statement. I remember when I first went on their website, it was the first thing, and it says that their mission statement is basically they're working to make the need for foster care obsolete, right? So that means that they have to address things and all of that to make it where, now whether that's realistic or not, I get that, but it's such an admirable thing because we know what that means, what that would take. So
That's very, very insightful to just say the least about all that you just gave us. I appreciate that. And it's very unique to be able to have someone who has persevered through resiliency, through your own struggles, and so forth, to be at a place to provide this information, to be able to talk about this experience, not from a place of trauma, to say the least, and so forth. I want to round back to this, but it's a piece of your story I want to touch on because me and you have a lot of shared experience, being a part of different organizations, and also, sharing aspect of, you went to 18 different high schools. Yeah. I graduated at my 21st high school, and just also having that experience working for CCIs. So, a little bit about my story, working for, juvenile facilities and also working for residential facilities, being on advisory boards and so forth. But I know, you have a unique perspective because you didn't have, at least from what I'm understanding, that all story from foster care.
Right. I didn't.
So when you went to work for a facility, you didn't have the objective of I need to make this better. You really, it was like, I'm gonna take this job and I'm gonna figure out what's going on, and you end up doing so many great things there. And also bringing some of your, youth and different things and from your story and your experience to programs and resources. So if you could share a little bit about that journey.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, most of the things about, just foster care and advocacy, I feel like my past kind of set me up to just go to those things because none of them at the time, I worked for a organization here. It was called Whaley Children's Center here in Flint. And they've been around almost, it'll be about 96 years now that Whaley has been around, and they have an entire story. I'm not going to go into their history or whatever, but I remember when I first got to Whaley, I actually was just looking for a job at the time. I actually had worked protective services for a while, and, it was what it was. I didn't work there that long. I got some experience there, but then I was looking for another job kind of right out of college, and that opportunity did come up and I started working there. But, there's so many different things. I think, I've worked with hundreds, of kids that have experienced, trauma, from abuse and neglect, all in foster care. Half or more than half, are up for adoption, looking to be adopted. The reality is that kids need to be adopted, but families that are looking to adopt aren't going to necessarily, they're not in line to adopt young people who might are exhibiting behaviors due to the trauma and neglect that they experience. And I always thought that was unfair, for the kids that we worked with, and they were 5 to 18, so I mean, like the whole gamut as well. And yes, that doesn't mean we've had some, but by and large, we've had just kids that are just waiting, and so there's so many different experiences there. One thing that I learned, while being there as well, is first of all, I'm like, hey, I learned more there that prior to going to Whaley, like I shared with you, when I first started advocating, I never thought I had a remarkable story to share until I got there. And I recognized that I was, being too narrow. And I think that as a former foster youth, we can fall into the same trap that others do, where they just identify us solely with our foster care experience. And then we had an entire lives that had nothing to do with foster care. I played I played sports, right? I was a varsity football player, was a football captain, wrestling. I ran track. I went to space camp before. I was picked from my school to go to space camp, and I was just going to be the second pick, but the first pick ended up getting in trouble, and then I was the second pick, so I was able to go, and then I got flown to Florida to go to space camp. I've had beautiful experiences as well, but I've also had traumatic experiences that were just home or just part of just life that never got me in. It never led to me going to foster care, just what I experienced. And I think that's the thing, is that everybody is going to go through something. And that's also an important note for prevention, as well, is that just because I was in foster care doesn't mean that there weren't other kids around me that weren't experiencing some of the same things that I was. They just didn't maybe have any eyes on it, right? And so I was able to, not just look at, okay, well, when I was in foster care, when I'm working now with these kids and connecting and relating to them, but as they started to share their stories, I'm like, man, I've experienced something like that too, and so it really helped me to be able to, connect with them. And one important thing that I realized, and I think it's the foundation of any kind of there's a lot of, and rightly so, there's a lot of criticism right now towards residentials and CCIs. They got to figure things out, and that's on them. And we knew that as well too. Being one, we definitely did everything we could to try to rise to the occasion each time. They definitely do need to become a lot more trauma informed, and there are some organizations that are out there, trying to do so, because for all of the criticisms, they've been there for those kids who have nowhere else to go as well. Even when it's not supposed to be designed like that, but we just, here in Michigan, you don't have a lot of foster homes, and unfortunately kids are staying in places a lot longer than what they're supposed to. Hopefully then that place can be somewhere that can at least be beneficial and positive during that time. And so during those times, resiliency is like the foundation, that I learned as a need for any of us, because what Michael, and what I know as well, the entire reason that we have to advocate for support for people that are living and experiencing life due to things, many that have nothing to do with them, at the fault of others, right? Whether they were abused by family or someone, or neglected, whether they were depending on someone to provide a service that didn't, and then they let them fall through the cracks. And yet now we still have to say, hey, all of this happened on your watch. You got to do something about it, the fact that we have to do that also shows that just because we went through what we went through and experienced what we did doesn't mean that we're now going to transition out of, from being foster care youth to foster care alumni, and now the world is just going to pacify you, right? And so we have to be able to be balanced, to be able to, learn how to understand our own needs, and to get the support and everything we need, but also to grow in our resiliency as well. And I think that's something that I've learned while working, in that, in those experiences. I mean, for the most part, it was almost everyday things. And I worked there for for about 7 years. I've seen kids that have aged out and they're now doing some good things, with themselves, going to school and jobs. Unfortunately, I've had kids that have aged out, and I like to be real. I've had some that aged out, and and life continue being hard for them. And so I know youth that are in prison that I've worked with. I know some youth that have taken their own lives that I've worked with there. I know some youth that have started families and are doing pretty good and working and graduating and going to school. So it's not any one thing, for every kid. But it's so important. It's not a job, or work to me. And I always look like it's really how we can handle resiliency. I work in mental health now. And one of the biggest things that they come to learn is that resiliency can be learned, as well. And it is an important factor to be able to heal and to progress from trauma. You don't just naturally grow, from trauma. You have to be able, there's things that you do intentionally that helps you to be able to grow from it. No, it doesn't change what you experienced. No, it does not take away the memories. It does not do that at all. Not at all. Some of these things you'll live with, for the rest of your life, but they don't have to steer your life. They don't have to dictate the direction that your life goes, right? And you can be able to use them in very powerful ways, right? To be able to help, not only just others, but to help yourself. You know what I'm saying? There's some things now, like I experienced as an adult, I'm just cool because I'm like, I done been through some things, it's something, some things people experience, they want to jump out the basement window, and I'm not downplaying that at all. But, I've been able to learn from those things, and I've been able to, become a little bit more resilient, a little bit more resourceful, right? So that, because one thing, when it rains, everybody gonna get wet. So none of us are gonna have great days every day. None of us are gonna have bad days every day. All of us are gonna experience both, though. And so what kind of person, do we need to be in order to get through, those moments that that are inevitably gonna happen, every day. And so that's one thing. That it was a good experience being there. At Whaley. I can talk for days, about Whaley. I went to grad school, and then I graduated, and I still, see young people that I worked with there, staff there. I mean, it was my life, at the time, and it's completely different now. But it wasn't just about the job, it was about the impact. It was
Right.
the sad, or maybe fortunate truth that, for a lot of those kids, we were the only family that they had. Some we continue to be, some of the only family. So we're checking in on them, and we are asking them how they're doing. If they got kids, we're telling them, oh yeah, put the hat on that child head. It's cold out here, and and still being able to support them even afterwards, because you need it. You need that support, and unfortunately, it doesn't get easier. As a foster youth. Alumni, especially when you're transitioning into adulthood. And I know that can be an entirely different podcast about the needs for transitional services. But I did it. And that really, it really just highlighted the necessity, of the work that I was doing. I started doing advocacy work and speaking and stuff long before I, started working, with Whaley. but it just highlighted the need more that while I'm here working with these kids, now I'm also in a different place in Washington, D.C., in Lansing, Michigan, right? In Flint, Michigan, advocating to hopefully put things in place so that when these kids get to the place where they need it, it's there for them and it can maybe be some light in all of the darkness that they've been experiencing.
Definitely, definitely. Wow, and I like to use the saying when there's little things that are good to take with you.
Mm-hmm.
So many breadcrumbs you just left right
Mm-hmm.
there, and like I feel like you just gave me a whole loaf from all those breadcrumbs, and I'm so grateful for that. There's a unique thing that I have experienced and you have experienced. I started advocating at 15. You
Yeah.
know, and I was advocating strong. I remember before I got onto the foster care side, on the juvenile side, I was in that cell, in
Yeah.
that little cell, and they were bringing around a little wagon with books and so forth. I saw a law dictionary in there.
Mm-hmm.
I grabbed that law dictionary and read that dictionary from front page to back page. I even read the appendix of the law dictionary. And from there, that opened my eyes to a whole new journey. I also
Yeah.
remember my judge or referee, as we say in Michigan, telling me that I was a menace to society.
Mm.
Like and I look back at moments like that in my experience, the abuse, the neglect, and the moving from home to even before foster care, being in the city of Detroit is where I was raised. Waking up on Saturday mornings, seeing people that were on drugs being beat up because they owe money
Owing
to the
money.
certain
Yeah.
person. Like this was a regular occurrence in my neighborhood, like seeing people not make it past 16, 18, and so forth. So I'm here to say on this platform, and I think to a point in your story, you can say that foster care kind of essentially saved my life. It wasn't
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Absolutely. No, it
perfect
wasn't.
by no chance, but it saved my life and offered opportunities that were far greater than the opportunities I ever could see for myself
Yes.
without foster care. And like I said, I started advocating at 15, and I've been doing this so forth. It's been about 10 years, that I've been doing work in the child welfare system
Mm-hmm.
in Michigan. And I have to continue to go and go on. I've worked as on the correction side of juvenile, I worked in the residential side with treatment. I actually interned with Genesee Health Systems on the mental health side, and stuff like that. I've been doing national work, and I believe we met through, national work and trying to
Yes.
develop a chapter here. And I remember, like, I met you, and I was like, that's somebody to kind of to look at, how you meet somebody, you're like,
Yeah.
I got to keep an eye on that person, and you are like a couple years older than me, and I was like, I can get some things from him, and I just want to say as we get ready to end this out, like I appreciate you being a guest, but nonetheless, like I said, I believe I told you this before. I appreciate what you've provided, not just for me, but for those advocates, those alumni coming up after you, because
Yeah.
you paved the way for me to be able to do and finish the work coming after you. As you got older and got to a place with NFYI and with NYOI and different things like that. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were looking like, okay, now all this work, what's going to happen after, and I'm a person of faith, so I'd be like, it must have been God to kind of
Yeah.
put me right there behind you and to kind of come behind you and to do that. But I want to say that um, I appreciate and I thank you for all that you've done and all that you continue to do. A couple things as we get ready to end out. What's next for you?
Wow. So it's life is great. Now. And first of all, I gotta say I appreciate that. As well. And I appreciate you sharing that because if anything, is not that I was doing it for it, but it's good to kind of have some of the validation because we understand that, man, this is a work that has to continue to go on, and there's in some instances of it, there is like a baton passing thing. And not only that, you want to know that what you're doing, to be able to see some fruit from it. And sometimes it takes a long time, it's a slow burn, but it's very encouraging to, hear others, be able to witness that they've had an impact on some things that you've been involved in and been able to do. And so I appreciate that. That's why I can't get away from it. You know what I'm saying? Like, even when you may not, your time may start to be allocated more towards other things, it's still always there. And so, like, as far as what's next, I'm working, I've been at this, I'm working with Genesee Health System. It's our local community mental health, county mental health agency here in Genesee County where I live at. So I've been working there a little over a year now and, doing that. I got married back last summer, and I have a baby on the way as well.
Okay,
Now,
okay.
so I'm gonna be a father, and
Yes,
those
congratulations.
are, yeah, thank you. And those are, times I think like a lot of us, in foster care, we've kind of like thought about outside of just all the advocacy work. Everybody has also kind of imagined like, man, what kind of parent am I going to be? I want to be
Right.
this kind of parent, because we're out trying to, save the day all the time. But being able to have that opportunity to be a parent and to raise a kid that never has to sniff any of those type of experiences that I did,
Mhm.
right? And so I'm just glad, I'm excited about that, and I love my wife, man, and it's just awesome. It's a whole new, experience for me. And so like we're doing that. I mean, like that's, I'm like, we're growing a family. I think like professionally, I mean, there's always something that I'm, looking towards doing. I believe I want to, at some point, I just don't know, but I'm doing more about it to go back to school. Actually, I had finished grad school a couple years back, but going to back to school to pursue a PhD or a professional degree. But I don't like school. I don't know
Okay.
if anybody know that I don't like school at all. But I do recognize the necessity, of doing the work, right?
Right.
I don't believe in just going to school and some just for whatever, but I think that we have to pioneer and kind of like continue trailblazing ways to create, more opportunities. And so I'm just trying to just really praying about it, asking around, so that I can really be confident, like, hey, this is, that area that I'll go, to, pursue it in. And so that's down the line. I really feel like this year, I want to, sometime during this year, I want to kind of be a little bit more decisive on like what that is and actually start to look at programs in schools. But right now, I want my experiences to really inform my decision making in terms of like, okay, what am I going to go study? Like, I want it to be something that is not self-serving, but is really going to be serving, to my community, to the people that I'm, and what's needed, and then how can I, help to meet that need or create more opportunities for that need. I think that's the approach that I want to do. And there's a lot out there as well. It's not
Absolutely.
that because I can't find something, it's that there's so much need, and you
Mhm.
so you want to, and there's so much that I'm interested and passionate about as well too. And so it's just really just kind of like taking that time before embarking, on that whole new journey. And I'm sure anyone that has already gone, like yourself, Dr. Michael, um that's an entirely new journey as well, so just trying to balance it out, and everything. And um I think it's so, it is a unique challenge to forecast for the future in terms of like what we're going to do, because
Yeah.
I think that we are only just experiencing the effects of COVID that we know about. but
Mm-hmm.
there's are going to be effects, afterwards, right? What are the shock
Mm-hmm.
waves of it? Everyone is looking forward to, putting this behind us, but there's going to be ramifications, right, that are going
Mm-hmm.
to linger on, we know, for years to come. And it is impacting us in many ways that we do know about. But I believe as a society, we really don't have an idea yet how it's going to impact us moving, forward in the future. And so I'm just kind of like looking, even keeping my mind like towards that as well. I know that it'll be something, and I know that many others do. But right now we're dealing with still the trauma, and right now we know that we're experiencing the deaths. Right, that's kind of
Yeah.
pretty much what it's been, dealing with family and friends and people that have been sick and people that are dying. And yeah, when the virus go away, then obviously people also stop dying from the virus. But what about what's going to be now the impact that we might have not had the opportunity to focus on because we've been dealing with the immediate blows, right? It's like
Right.
this happens, and you have to focus on this. Somebody comes to you and gets in your face and grabs all of your attention, and someone else goes to your house and starts ramshacking it, and you don't even know that's going on because you're dealing with the threat right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of one of one of those
Yeah.
things as well. So it'll definitely be an opportunity. People are going to continue needing help. They're going to be needing more and more help, and we know that. And I, for one, don't want to let especially our particular community of foster youth alumni to be forgotten, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not any other population as well too, but we all represent, and have that opportunity to represent a population. And I want to make sure that it the blow is not as significant as what it could be, right? So
For
there's work to
sure.
be done. There's still work to be done, and I think it's just preparing to continue to be at when those tables convene. We're gonna be there at those tables, right, to influence
Mm-hmm.
some of those decision making so that it can ultimately benefit, who it needs to benefit. Um, so yeah, man, it's things are good, and the future, it's coming. It's bright, but it's also interesting as well. So
Definitely. So I just, congratulations on the being,
thank you.
an upcoming father. I know that's,
I'm the pappy. Yeah,
you
I'm the
know, that
pappy.
that is going to be a very unique and experience within itself.
Yes.
One thing, I want, from you just to end this out. We're going a little bit over our time, but that's okay. We both talkers, so I was prepared. Is From a professional sense, what advice and tidbits do you have? And then um, after that, from an alumni sense, what
Mm-hmm.
advice and tidbits do you have for those people who are transitioning out right now, and all the different aspects of foster care and alumni that are happening right now? Like, what advice can you give them, right now? So those two pieces.
Some of that advice will be the same for both. Ask questions and understand that there are resources out there that you are eligible for that you may not have heard about, and you might not hear about it unless you ask questions. So ask questions, ask specific questions. Ask for exactly what you want, and there are people that are willing to help you. And when I say ask questions, ask like, how can I, as a former foster youth, go to school for free? Ask those kind of questions. What kind of job is right for me? I think those are some. So ask questions. I would think, be balanced. Take care, um, you know, um, of yourself. Take care and be great in treating yourself, taking care of your mental health, but do it with balance as well. And so you still got other needs as well. And you're going into adulthood, as well. And so I think that's another one. And then develop healthy relationships, especially when you're transitioning out, because you cannot do adulthood alone. And I know sometimes that's difficult, for us when we're in foster care to really kind of have relationships that we feel we could trust in. But develop healthy relationships, build, relationships with, and get around people that, love you and care about you, and you can do the same with them. I think professionally as well, learn what it means to be a professional in the thing that you're passionate about. It is a big difference, but to a doctor being a professional and, say, for instance, a DJ or a musician, right?
Definitely,
If your
definitely.
doctor came dressed like the DJ and say they was gonna go get ready to do surgery on you, you would stop it instantly. You wouldn't let it fly. You don't matter how well he knew what he wanted to do. He didn't even look the part. So
Hmm.
learn what it means to be professional, and then take on those opportunities to be able to learn and get your foot in the door, as well. Some things you could get in the door by an internship, and if you can't do an internship, volunteer. And sometimes volunteering can get you experience beyond your credentials, because you might not be able to give a resume and say, hey, you can hire me, but you can go and say, hey, can I volunteer? And you get exposed not only to, maybe what that field has to offer at a level that you don't have the degree or the credentials yet for, but it also affords you to be able to meet others as well, and meet people, and they know your name, and you're able to tell them about yourself, so that you can be able to step into that opportunity when inevitably you do get the degree or the credentials to go along with it. And so I think volunteering is vastly underrated a lot of times, because everyone's looking to try to just jump in and get a job, but you can move a lot faster, higher, a lot quicker when you volunteer. So find time to volunteer, but volunteer in the area that you're interested in doing, as well. And all they can do is say no, right? And all they can do is say no, or yes. And so, volunteer, and you can definitely get into some places that you might have never thought that you'd be able to get into. And, so I think that's definitely one. And make mistakes. That's the other one. Fail forward. Failure is a part of life. Just because you fail or make a mistake or something doesn't mean it's the end of the world. And anybody that's successful has 100 stories to tell you about failure, as well. So I think those are, some advice that I could give.
So I just want to say thank you. I hope you guys that are listening feel encouraged and enriched and that much smarter. And some of the things that has happened in the state of Michigan for as foster care, for as Brotha Encouragement, and story and so forth. I just want to say thank you for being a guest. I definitely would love to have you back. There's so many conversations and different things that we can talk about and go on for. So to the listeners, just thank you guys for tuning in. This is just the beginning of what I'm trying to do here in providing a space for us to just talk, like
Yeah.
because that's what we need to do. We need to bring the conversation to the table, and with bringing that conversation to the table, we hope to enact change and educate, and from that education and change, building a better system that is hopeful, that is preventative, that is safe, and that is healthy. Um, I just want to leave this last tidbit with you guys. A lot of people don't know that foster care doesn't. It just didn't appear. It derived from what we call the orphan train, and I'm not going to get too much into that. But I want you guys to take some time to investigate that yourself. Learn how it developed. And ask questions. For those who are thinking to be foster parents or whichever, challenge yourself. Ask yourself, what is my why? Why do I want to do this? And then after you challenge yourself and figure out what that why is, and act some action behind it. Don't just wait for the licensing. Go to an agency, talk to them, mentor, volunteer. So you get to see what that demographic look like before you invite that person into your home. So you are built and prepared, once that happens. I am Michael D. Davis Thomas, like Brother Encouragement said, Dr. MDDT speaks, you know. And this is Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys next time.
Awesome.